Good morning. Welcome to Daily Devotions with me, Pastor Stephen, of Family Worship Center, as well as your pastor of the Northwoods. It's good to have you today on a lovely Thursday morning. You can kind of, wrong side, right here, right there. That's my cat's butt. Yep. What a way to start out today's daily devotion, but wouldn't be home without him, I guess. Oh my goodness. As he aggressively searches for pets. How about that? Well, hey, here we are. So you can see on the screen, I have the next verse or passage, or, we'll see where the time takes us. Here in a moment, just 1 second. I'm just making sure everything's good on my other monitor, because when I saw that it was Psalm 62:7, or just a psalm in general. It wasn't specifically this verse and chapter. But okay, bud, I see you. When I saw that it was a psalm, I knew that I'd probably be looking up some other stuff along with it. So here we go. Psalms 62:7, my salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. I mean, going right away to the full chapter. Psalm 62 is only 12 verses. It's for the director of music for Jeduthun, a Psalm of David. And so, I mean, as I have it on screen, you can see the verbiage, right? So I'm not going to read the whole thing, right? It's just a song. Soul rests in God. Salvation comes from him. He is my rock and salvation. He's my fortress. I will never be shaken, right? We saw, truly is my rock and my salvation. He's my fortress. I will not be shaken. And then we got that verse 7, right? My salvation and my honor depend on God. Other translations will have it say, God Most High is my salvation and my honor. But, it's the same thing. And then it just keeps going. Power belongs to you, God, and with you is unfailing love, and you reward everyone according to what they have done. So it's a wonderful song, a wonderful psalm. But I did want to kind of look at this verse in particular, right? If we go back, it makes sense that our salvation is dependent on God, right? God saves. He wants to do that. He made it access through faith in Jesus Christ. And we know that through the Gospel of John. He's the way, the truth, the life, and no one gets to the Father except through him being Jesus Christ, right? He's my mighty rock. He's my refuge. Things we may have even said or studied ourselves. But what does it mean? Like, this isn't me like fishing for you, the reader. I actually want to explore this myself. Why does my honor depend on God? When I read this, it was like, my honor depends on God. And traditionally, right, we would honor is something, I guess, earned or displayed, right? Gained, I guess, is another way. Earned, through that, right? Because I've just pulled up some definitions quick, right? High respect, great esteem, right? Adherence to what is right or to a conventional standard of conduct, I'm seeing here. Regard with great respect. To fulfill an obligation or keep an agreement, right? Those are some of the definitions. I'm looking at some of the synonyms here. Morals, honesty, honorableness, integrity, the adherence to what is right, and to a conventional standard of conduct. I really like this. Looking at this, I think that's what we're trying to hear here, is that my integrity, my honesty, my uprightness, my ethics, and my morals depend on God. See, that comes alive right there. That comes alive right there, because that makes 100% sense. Because there's the honor that we earn through our conduct, through how we carry ourselves and our character. I do think that honor is, it's not necessarily like earned, like some people bestow honor to you. It's not like it's someone giving you honor. It's more of like, as an outside observer, you know when you're observing someone that you would then attach the word that person is a person of honor, right? That's an honorable. You know it when you see it, right? So it's not necessarily like you pull out the checklist and they're like, they did this and they did this, and if they do one more thing, then they're an honorable person. So I get that, but I'm not so sure that's what we're talking about here, because we're not talking about what we earn for ourselves, but rather what is dependent on God. And what I'm seeing here is moral ethics, honesty, uprightness, integrity. All that stuff is dependent on God. I mean, 100%. I mean, yesterday we just had that verse to live our lives worthy of the gospel, right? Worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And this is that same concept. In fact, I wonder here in just a sec. Psalm 62:7. Here we go. Yep, let's see here. My honor refers to the dignity, worth, and the glory that the psalmist finds and places in God, not in worldly achievements or human praise. So it's spot on. That. Obviously, I could have taken a moment or found one of my concordances. There's somewhere. I have a Old Testament concordance somewhere. Oh, it's at the church. Duh. But even without the concordance, we were still able to accurately investigate that the word honor here, which translates, if you were to go look at the original language, to honor, it doesn't fully translate to our English, and so we kind of had to investigate what word we were looking at here, and we are definitely looking at not the version of honor where it's tied to achievements and how we carry ourselves, but rather to the level of living that God calls us to, right? And so our honor is dependent on God. I got someone else wrote this. In this context, my honor right here, in this context of this word, signifies the dignity and worth that God bestows upon his people. It's a recognition that one's true value and glory are found in God's eyes, not in the worldly status and accomplishments. Ooh, I like that. This comes down to the idea of justification as well. I'm loving it. This is coming alive here. A lot of, when we talk about the word justification, kind of a synonym would be of, well, it's not really, validation isn't really justification. I mean, we want to feel valid, we want to feel justified. I guess it's kind of a synonym. Like, it feels good to receive justification and validation in our everyday life from the world around us. But at the end of the day, any validation and justification we get from the world dies with the world when the world dies or we die. So it is, in essence, temporary. And so we shouldn't be seeking after the justification and validation of the world, but rather we should be seeking those things from God who's eternal. That if we're justified and validated by God, if that's the case, then it doesn't matter what the world says or does. I have an example in my life where this has happened in my ministry, where I'm not going to get into specifics at all, but there was a incident in my life in which certain parts of my character were called into question in reference to how I was treating a friend, and that they were confused why I pulled back instead of pushed forward. And at the end of the day, I felt that I needed to do the decision I had, and I prayed about it, and I let sleeping dogs lie with where it was. And a lot of people who were not connected to that situation were rather upset with me. And, I remember my wife asked me, like, if I'm going to be okay. And I remember telling her, I was like, I'm perfectly fine. Like, they can think what they want to think. At the end of the day, and I said, this is in the house before this one. We were in the living room. I looked at her. I said, at the end of the day, the Lord justifies me, and I'm good. And I remember we didn't even talk about it after that. And it was 2.5 years later. I remember people who had observed that situation ended up coming up to me and apologizing to me about how they thought about me over the last 2 years and how they were wrong and how they shouldn't have jumped to conclusions, stuff like that. And it was one of those things where I sat there and I truly believed and knew that the Lord had my back, and that it didn't matter that eventually I got my worldly justification and validation. They could have thought that for the rest of their lives. It actually didn't bother me, because at some point I'm going to die and I'm going to be in heaven forever. So what I should be concerned about is not the validation or the justification from the world around me. And although that might offer me comfort, once again, that comfort is also temporary. So when we look at Psalm 62:7, the layup is my salvation is dependent on God. The layup is that he's my mighty rock and refuge. But here's the slam dunk. Our honor is dependent on God. Do what is right by God's standards. Live your life in accordance to his mercy and his grace, his teachings. And then if you're doing that, then it doesn't matter what the people around you think, say, or do. This earth is temporary. This world is temporary. And although I don't want to make us sound like a defeatist, like we're all going to die, don't do nothing. That's not what I'm saying. It's just recognizing where the value is for you. Is it more valuable for you to make sure that you are comfortable for a minuscule amount of time compared to eternity on this earth? Or is it more valuable for you to make sure you're storing up treasures in heaven to lay down at the Lord's feet? You pick. You answer that question. I'm answering the question for myself. It is more valuable for me to invest. We'll use investing terms. I'm in my 30s. We're getting that all figured out. Invest in eternity. And to recognize that, yes, my salvation is in God, but my honor is also dependent on God. And so I will remain honorable by God's standards and allow him to tell me if I'm being honorable. I'm not going to wait for my wife to tell me that I'm being honorable in the eyes of God. I'll just go right to God and ask him. Now, I believe my wife has wisdom and can discern if I am as well, so I'm not saying that. I'm not going to look at her and be like, I'm not listening to you, like I just was using that as an example that even as awesome as my wife is, she's not perfect either. So my validation and justification should come from the Lord. And now the Lord will tell me to live a life that will be able to be seen and understood by others, that I should be seen as honorable. But at the end of the day, people get things wrong, including myself, and we need to make sure that we are getting what we need from the source, God, our salvation and our honor. Awesome. Well, I learned something new today. I think that was a lot of fun. I actually wasn't sure how long of a daily devotion this was going to be, but we're right up on 15 minutes. And yeah, Psalm 62:7, highly suggest it. I mean, it's kind of weird for me to say that sentence because I'm pretty much going to highly suggest every passage we end up exploring together. But I mean, like, I truly enjoy reading the Bible, and I honestly, like, at the end of the day, for all this daily devotion videos, you know, because I'm gonna do this for a while. I don't know, maybe every day. I want to grow in you a passion to be like, this is fun to read the Bible, and I also want to encourage you. I just pulled up a little Google, and I just asked some questions and saw where it took me, right? And if you're, you know, obviously Google will just throw a zillion things at you, and I know they have the AI, which conglomerates all that knowledge. I would encourage you that don't be too afraid of that stuff, because if you run into something where you're like, you're inquisitive, you have a question, maybe you're doubting, like, I don't know if I trust the AI on this one, or I don't know if this author is, bring that, like, save it, write it down, whatever that is, and bring that to your local pastor and talk to them, right? And see if maybe they have a different source. Maybe they can confirm, you know, like, oh yeah, that's a really good teach. I read that book, you know, whatever it is. So don't be afraid to search out answers, because if you hit a wall, that's not the stopping. You just go, you take that information and you go to someone you trust, a local pastor, anybody, and an elder of the church, a deacon. You know, it doesn't have to necessarily have to be a pastor, but, you know, someone who's well studied with Scripture. And so, yeah, awesome. I very much enjoy this, and I highly suggest reading Psalm 62. It's a good one. 12 verses. You can do it. I believe in you. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. That was a long outro, but I'm having fun this morning on a Thursday. How about that? That's where I put my watch. I got a black watch on top of a black desk, and I did not know where I put it the other day. There you go. Well, my name's Stephen Jetland. I'm the pastor of Family Worship Center, as well as your pastor of the Northwoods. So, hey, I hope you have a wonderful Thursday, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.